Budgeting, advocating for yourself, and assembling the troops. That's what we're talking about today in this series where I take you on my morning walks and I walk you through the questions that I had as a beginner music educator, and how who you are as a person and who you aspire to be as a teacher is going to influence all of these decisions. You have so much control in your hands as far as starting the year out confidently, feeling strong, and ready to take on the challenges that the year holds. But there are some things that may feel out of your control. Getting the materials that you need to do your job correctly, advocating for yourself, getting the respect that you deserve as an educator. And that's what this video is about. Because it's no secret that even though teachers are the actual future of our entire society, we are not high on the ladder as far as being taken seriously. This video is all about controlling what you can to make sure that you get the resources that you need, that you're feeling confident in your place in our school system, and you're shown the importance of the part that you play in it. So let's start with this first idea of a budget. Every teacher needs access to materials, whether they're basic like colored pencils or they're the instruments that music educators use to instill literacy into our students. And every teacher needs a budget to make sure that these needs are met. Now, you may be sitting there saying, I have a budget and it does meet my needs. Or you may be like one of the countless educators who go without a budget entirely or have one that nowhere near meets their needs. Because this is nothing new, many teachers are actually accustomed to using their own paycheck to subsidize what their budget or lack thereof does not meet. And to this generalized norm, I say that teachers need to put themselves in the shoes of other professions. Would you ever look at a lawyer who works in a firm and say, okay, but we need you to bring your own pencils, staples, stapler, fax machine, copy machine, printer? No, you wouldn't. Just like you wouldn't ask a doctor to bring their own tools that they need for surgery. Same thing with electricians, plumbers, police officers, firefighters, chefs. They all come to work knowing for a fact that they will have all the tools that they need to get their job done. And yet a budget for educators to get their needs met is consistently denied or thought of later. So much so that the National Center for Educational Statistics found that 94% of teachers subsidize their own needs. And this was back in 2014, pre-pandemic, meaning that it has only gotten worse since then, although I'm not sure how it can get worse. With 30% of those teachers, specifically in higher need areas, claiming that they spend over $1,000 just to get the things that they need for their students to succeed. Now, there are tools that we'll be talking about that you can use to get the resources that you need without going through the school system. But it is important for us to understand the issues facing the teacher population at large before we continue on. To better understand the problems facing our profession that we love, so that we're better prepared to advocate for ourselves in a world that consistently does not see the impact that we have. Now, that being said, though these problems are general for all teachers, there are a few specific problems that only affect music educators and other special educators in the school. These are the people that see an entire school's worth of students and therefore deal with some of the same problems that you and I will. Now, subbing isn't something that is just a problem for one teacher, it's a problem for many. And a lot of that is due to the sub shortage that is constantly plaguing our schools. But so you understand the importance of advocating for yourself, I had a little story to tell you. At one of the schools that I worked for, and granted this was a public charter school, so some of the rules do differ from public school systems. There were two music teachers. There was me and another wonderful teacher that was going on maternity leave. And we were told that they were looking for a long-term sub for when she was gone. And the weeks went by and the months went by. And even though this teacher planned out everything that she could and continued to question when were we going to find out about the sub, come to find out later on that no sub had been hired. Close to this other educator's due date, when it was time for her to go out on this maternity leave, I was brought into the admin's office where I was informed that they had somehow fit her schedule into mine. Now, it would have been a squeeze, but I could have done it. But when I dared to ask how much I would be compensated for taking on another teacher's entire job, I was looked at as if I was crazy. I was told that I was not being a team player, and even the word greedy got thrown around. Now, this was right before the pandemic. Everything was up in the air anyway, and I ended up only having to teach these lessons for the first couple weeks before everything was basically shut down. When I came back, I talked to a woman who was very used to dealing with injustice. This was a woman who had helped fight in the civil rights movement and who had done so much to help educators as a whole, and specifically underrepresented educators, to get the basic rights that they needed. Now, her and I had a lot of conversations about what had happened. And she, in turn, was ready to go to bat, not only just for me, but for all the special educators that were in the school that were used frequently as long-term subs, again without any form of compensation. When if an actual sub had been paid for, or when an actual sub had been hired, they would obviously receive a paycheck. Now, I did really like the admin at my school, but we're part of a profession where it's seen as sacrificing so much of ourselves, so much of our time. And if we show unwillingness to do that, then we're seen as not being the team players that every school needs, instead of just saying things for what they are. We love our profession, but at the end of the day, it is a job, and not an easy job. And educators deserve to be fairly compensated for that job. It's because we're so accustomed to being used that we don't advocate for ourselves. And it was only with the help of this one extraordinary person, the special teachers who all got behind me, that we were able to make a change. Not just for me, because I was compensated for those couple weeks, but also for any teacher that was asked to be a long-term sub from here on out at that school. Now, there was another group that I had support from, and that was the parents. I had gotten to know the parents of my school well, either through the concerts that I would throw, the after-school activities that I was part of, duties that I had, one of which was pickup duty, where with my walkie-talkie, I was quite quick at getting my students to their parents because I knew the parents and I was able to do it very quickly. All the parents loved me for it. These connections would later help me not only with my own advocacy, but also with more connection with my students, because there's nothing better than talking to a parent, specifically a parent who might be more used to getting bad news, and being able to tell that parent that their student is working hard in your classroom, or having that home support if the child isn't working as hard as they should be. Now, obviously this is depending on the parent, but the parents that I met, even though they were weighed down with the burdens of having so many different anxieties and things that they were worried about, the parents that I met were kind and loving and ready to hear me if I told them that, believe it or not, their child wasn't perfect. And because I wanted to work with them, they didn't feel like they were alone, meaning that they were also there when I needed them. So it's time to find those parents, right? It's time to talk to the other special teachers. It's time to find the other teachers, the admin that is willing to help you on your way, wherever that takes you. Because depending on the size of your dream, if you want a band program in a school that has never had a band program before, you want to take your students on field trips, there are resources, big resources that you need. You're also going to need all the help that you can get, which is why it's so important to also know all the resources that you have at your fingertips to get the materials that you need. So let's start with the top crowdfunding platforms. The number one being DonorsChoose.
With DonorsChoose, you create a project with specific resources needed, and donors, many of whom are total strangers, can fully or partially fund it. Once your project is funded, the materials are shipped directly to your school. Now, this does come with some pros and some cons. Pros, it's a trusted platform where teachers regularly find resources that they need. It's used all the time. Many projects are matched or funded by corporate sponsors, which also amplifies your reach. It's completely free to use. Over 88% of schools use DonorsChoose, making it widely recognized and reliable. Also, a lot of companies use it as a tax refund opportunity. Some of the cons. You must adhere to the platform's guidelines when setting up your project, which means that a lot of times you cannot just ask for money. It has to be for materials that then have to be shipped directly to your school. Campaigns are also time sensitive, so you must meet your fundraising goal within the set time frame, or any money that you did raise would go back.
Now, I've used DonorsChoose before, and one of my best successes was when I wanted to get ukuleles for my fifth graders. I needed 40 ukuleles, And the entire thing was not only funded, but it also made my students get so into it with me. We took pictures after I got permission slips from my students' parents. We made thank you cards. It was a wonderful experience that then made the ukuleles even more valuable to my students because they knew what we had to do in order to get them. The second largest platform is GoFundMe.
Now, with GoFundMe, you create a campaign and funds go directly to you. So it's just money going to you with tax deducted automatically. Unlike other platforms, you can fund virtually anything related to your classroom. Okay, there are not really many guidelines, so there do have some pros with this. All right, the funds go directly to you. It's very flexible in how you get to spend them. There's no major restrictions on what you can fund. It's easy to share with friends, family, and your community, and you receive the cash quickly, all right, which can be very convenient. All right. The cons, they're not tax deductible for your donors. So a lot of major companies aren't going to be looking at it, especially because there is no built-in audience. With GoFundMe, it's going to be the one promoting your project. GoFundMe, you'll actually need to promote it on your own through social media and sending people to the link. There's also a processing fee that's taken out of the funds raised. There's a lot of other similar platforms to consider: Adopt a Classroom, Classful, and Teacher Funder. If you want more information on these, I can also make a video on them.
Now, I do have a couple pieces of advice when using crowdfunding platforms.
Be specific about what you need and why. People want clarity for these kinds of things. And it's important that if you can, use some photos or videos. Obviously, make sure that you have the permission slips for student images. Remember, I've done that before. If there's no built-in audience, like on DonorsChoose, then it's important that you share your campaign often to get it in front of more people and have other people sharing it as well. Say thank you to the donors. This helps build relationships and encourages them to support you again, which you might need them to in the future. And start small with your fundraising goals and build from there. Grants and scholarships are also a great option. Many schools even have someone whose job it is to help you write these grant proposals for big ticket items. Right? Again, some cons though: grants and scholarships are time consuming and highly competitive, so there's no guarantee of success. You may also need to do follow-ups along the way.
Another way to get the funding you need is to assemble the troops, aka the PTA or whatever parent association you have.
Create fundraising events, concerts, carnivals, or other large events. They can bring in significant funding to your program, but organizing events can be time consuming. It may not be feasible for all schools or districts, or even if you're a first-year teacher and just getting used to actually teaching. Remember also, the success of the event often depends on attendance and turnout, which you cannot always predict.
Now, things like this are time consuming and depending on your school or district might not be feasible. It also highly depends on local turnout and the support you get from the community as a whole, but it can be a fantastic resource. So as you can see, there are tools out there to make this easier to do. And a lot of times, all it takes is for you to assemble the troops that you have built around you to get the support you need to fund the dreams that you have for this school. And knowing what we're worth as a profession is just as important. So we can challenge the norm, advocate for ourselves, ask ourselves the basic question of, would a lawyer, doctor, plumber, etc. be asked to do that? Meaning the materials, working outside of our contract hours, not being paid for the services that we do. Because we are just as important. And with that, I think it is time for my favorite part of the day. But first, we gotta go and pick up the hubby. Jump in, baby. I am ready. Do you know what time it is? It's
time for coffee!
time for coffee! Thank you for sharing your time with me. Until next time, happy playing.